Hey, hi everybody. I'm Dan from France. Welcome to Huddle. And today for the talk to the all, I'm with Ken Crippen. How are you, Ken?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm I'm very fine, very good. I'm very happy to talk with one of the great historians of football, and I'm really excited to talk about the Football Learning Academy. I want to hear more about that, and let's talk after about history, Hall of Fame, and whatever you want to talk.
All right, sounds great.
So, Ken, for the people in Europe, it's important that we understand who you are. We know who you are. So you're an historian. You're one of the leaders of the Football Learning Academy.
Mhm.
You also have a podcast. So how we can bring everything together? Because I'm pretty sure you start as a fan of this sport first, but how do you become a high-selling historian and someone who share with the Football Learning Academy football in the history of football? I am right with that when I what I'm
Mhm.
saying.
Yeah,
So, so
yeah. Basically, I started off big Buffalo Bills fan, so sorry for the Dolphins fans out there. But
there are 32 teams, so whatever.
there you go. Yeah, it's always a great rivalry.
Yeah,
But yeah, I started off Buffalo Bills fan. Just wanted to start diving into the history of the game. And the more I learned about the history of the game, the more I wanted to learn more about the history of the game. So it just kind of expanded from there, going farther and farther back into history, going beyond just Buffalo and Western New York, making sure that, I could learn as much as I could about the sport. And then got involved with the Professional Football Researchers Association, was in a leadership position there for 15 years. And then I went and formed the Football Learning Academy, an online school teaching pro football history where we want to put today's game into historical context while at the same time having a platform to raise money to help retired players who need it the most that can't pay their medical bills. So that's what you get at the Football Learning Academy. You get classes, you have interviews, there's a blog, like you had mentioned, there's a podcast where we try to learn firsthand what happened throughout history from people who created history, as well as classes on all aspects, different teams, leagues, different eras, things like that. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what I've been doing. And you had mentioned Hall of Fame. I am fortunate to be on the Blue Ribbon Committee for contributors for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm a voting member of that. So I'm guessing we'll dive into that later on in this episode.
yeah, yeah. I have so many questions for the Pro Football Hall of Fame process because it's fascinating. And the history of this game also is fascinating because there is so many evolution during the decades. You have a decades or the team were only running the ball. After that, they pass the ball more, but even in the defensive side of the ball, I guess we say now that defense win championship, but it's come from history that that it, because so many great defense have made one Super Bowl. So I think it's important. And if we goes between the 70s and the 2000 first, because it's where I start in 96, but I really focus on that first to understand the game. What was the evolution of football during that time, and specifically the position change, linebacker position, offensive line position like this? How can you describe the evolution, and why they evaluate that way?
I would
It's a
say
tricky
probably
question. Huh? Sorry.
no worries. Yeah. As far as the changes in the game, I'd say the biggest ones are probably on the defense, and it's mainly to hamper the defenses. So as a result, you're able to open up more offense, get more scoring. So, like you had mentioned, defense wins championships, but nowadays, you need an offense that can score. And that's really what you're looking at for winning championships. I mean, yeah, you can have like the 2000 Ravens or something like that, who were able to win a game on their defense, but more often than not, it's going to be a shootout as far as who's going to be able to score more points. Um, so I'd say hampering the defenses is probably the biggest changes that you've seen from the 70s through the 2000s. And as a result, when you see more offense, there's also going to be changes to schemes within offenses in order to be able to take advantage of those new rules hampering the defenses. So whether it's, the offensive line play, I mean, you're going to see different schemes as far as how they're going to be blocking in order to be able to free up different things that they're doing. I mean, the Wildcat formation, while it's not new, it's something that came back from history, basis off the single wing. Those types of advances you're going to see, and that impacts how the rest of the players on offense are going to play. And then subsequently, you're going to see changes in defenses in order to be able to go against that. You see things like the Tampa 2 coming out, different other styles of defenses to try to counteract everything that the offenses are doing. So I think when you look at the change in the game, it really comes down to those rules changes. And that's really a lot of the stuff was hampering defenses in order to favor offenses.
And the change of the defense you mentioned, there is an explanation why back in the 70s, for example, you don't have so many stats before you guys, historians, start counting, for example, the tackles and stuff like that. This is why maybe when in the 80s and more in the 19s, you starting having those stats counting and not before. It's related, or just it was not the case before.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that media likes to use today is the quarterback rating. Well, that didn't come into place until 1972. So that's not something that's been around. And yeah, you can apply that same formula back in time, and they've done that. When you look at statistic sites, they're going to be able to calculate it going back. But I think, when you start having the advent of more internet, more computers, now you start getting into fantasy football, you start getting into gambling, things like that. That increases the need for more statistics in order for people to be able to do analysis for their fantasy teams, to be able to figure out, which way they're going to bet on any particular game or particular player. So I think it kind of feeds itself with all of that. As you start coming out with more of this stuff, it lends itself to people wanting more. They just want to consume more and more. And as the computing power gets better and better, you can start cranking out a lot more of these statistics in order to be able to look at a game in any way that you want to look at it. Now, you do have to be careful with all that because statistics without context are meaningless. So, if you don't understand the context behind a specific statistic, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. And if you're going through broadcast nowadays, there are some of these statistics I look at, I'm like, how is that meaningful to anybody? They're saying, well, this person, historic, they've gained more yards on Mondays when the moon is full or something like that. And I was like, who cares? It doesn't mean anything. So you have to take a look at the statistics that they're coming out with and say, okay, what does this truly mean? And how does it actually relate to how good of a player is, or how good of a team is, or how things place within history, things like that. So you just have to be careful with a lot of that information out there, that put it in context if you truly want to understand what it really means. And it's not just some statistic for the sake of creating a statistic.
I'm really agree, and if I can share my humble historic, the thing I did, it's I learned the 90s Dolphins 90s on offensive side of the ball, and I want you to understand why. Because people were saying, for example, in the case of Richmond Webb, I'm starting now to, to speak that, but it was not a great run block uh, uh, tackle. So I had to understand why, and I go through the stats. It's true that you don't have so many back in that time, so many running backs during this decade of the Miami Dolphins didn't score 1,000 yards a year. So, but I want to go far, a little more deeper in that, and I understand that they were trying the ball almost with Don Shula 70 times and just running the ball very less, but still they were averaging more than 4 yards per carry, which was one of the average standard in the NFL. So I was saying, it's, I don't read that. He's not saying they were not blocking well in the running. Uh, they were not just running the balls enough to have stats. So when you say that you have to go back to contest,
Mhm.
it's I guess it's my example I have regarding my story, but I think that there is more and more of that, so for sure. If you look at the cornerbacks before the 2000 with the changed rules, you can compare a quarterbacks before the rule change and after. Of course, it's not the same way to cover a wide receiver. I'm going in the right direction with that, or it's not the way we have to think about it. When you talk about,
No.
you have to contextualize, sorry, the,
Mhm.
the stats.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, you have to take a look at it. Okay, if they're running 4 yards a carry, they're effective at running the ball. It's just they didn't run the ball. And you look at it, okay, well, why aren't they running the ball? I don't know. Some guy named Marino is in the backfield too. So you're taking advantage of his immense skill sets in order to be able to win games. And they were able to win games with Marino as the quarterback. Why would you hand it off to somebody else if he's going to be able to help you win games because of his abilities? Now, you can also make the argument too. Maybe if they ran more, then they could have gone farther into the playoffs. Who knows?
Who knows?
That's something to look at. But again, that's all part of that context of, are they effectively running the ball? Are they not effectively running the ball? Why are they not effectively running the ball? Are there other things that they're doing well that say, hey, keep doing the stuff that you're doing well? For example, they're getting 4 yards a carry, but they're getting 9 yards a pass reception. I'll take the 9 yards
Of course.
because you're
And
going to move farther down the field. And if you're scoring points, then you're effective. Yeah, you talk about we should have balance between run and pass and stuff, but you take a look at some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, take a look and see if their teams were effective running the ball like they were with Marino, or maybe not with Marino. And then, you know, say, like, well, if you've got a great quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback, then why would you hand it off to somebody else if they're performing well?
yeah,
So,
there, I think it's important to understand. Now if we look at football today, we will talk about more the throwing, the pass, because it's a pass throwing link. I don't know how
mhm,
you guys name that, but it's a you try to score the much point you can, the most quicker you can. Uh, if you can score a 70-yard pass touchdown, you do it. Back in
mhm,
the time, I guess 70s, 80s, 90s, it was all about time possession.
mhm,
And because you start having in the history great pass rushers making pressure to the quarterbacks, what is fascinating me, it's Bruce Smith. We will talk about Bruce Smith when we talk about the Buffalo Bills. But when I took the example of Bruce Smith, he averaged almost one sacks per per game.
mhm,
So I can understand that teams were running the ball against him because he could hurt the quarterback if we're going to throw the ball often, like today. So
mhm,
it's all about we have to because Bruce Smith in a league of the teams running the ball first, like the two first down, it was a run. I mean, he
mhm,
has more stats career than edge rusher who has now one game more and much more opportunities. So it's all about contextualizing. I mean, when you talk about a player, you have to watch his era. That's how I learned speaking with you and others historians and people I had I was blessed to talk with. But you, we have to uh, judge or do an analysis of a player during his era. Like today, if I took the basketball, I mean, compare LeBron James to Michael Jordan, it's kind of complicated because it's not the same era. And if we took the example of Michael Jordan, I mean, you go everyone everywhere in the world without internet back in the time. Everyone knows Michael Jordan back in. So
Hmm.
it's about everything has to be compared in this time, right? I
Hmm.
understand well what you was trying to explain in us.
Yeah, and you take a look at it too as well. You may want to use the run to set up the pass or the pass to set up the run, and a lot of that's going to depend on where you've got your skills and the types of schemes you want to run. If you've got a Dan Marino and a running back that's not at that same level, then yeah, you're probably going to want to use the pass to set up the run. But if you've got Barry Sanders in the backfield, you're probably going to want to use the run to set up the pass. Or you know maybe you try to change it up every so often, say, hey, we're going to pass a little bit and then we're going to give Barry the ball and he's going to run wild. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but it gets back to the basic point that we were trying to say is, without context, you don't really know what's going on. You can't just look at a box score and think you know what's going on.
And related to that, I have a question. The change of the league now, who become a pass heavy league,
Mhm,
it's because of the rule change of the
mhm.
cornerbacks.
Right.
That create this, or it's for other reasons? Because I don't find the other reason.
Yeah, I mean, rules changes definitely did it, but you look back at the 1960s, people who are NFL fans were always complaining about the American Football League, saying they were just a pass happy league and stuff like that. Well, that's what the NFL's turned into now. So it's kind of come full circle from the 60s to now that, yeah, they're doing a lot of throwing of the ball, and a lot of that's because of the rules changes. It makes it much easier to be able to throw the ball because you're hamstringing the defense. They can't hit. They can't, do lots of different things. You can't bump before, after 5 yards, all that kind of stuff. You can clothesline the quarterback back then. You can't do that now. I mean, you breathe on a quarterback the wrong way and they're calling a 15-yard penalty. So there's a lot of changes that are really impacting the game. And as a result, it's opening up the offense, which is what the NFL wanted. And you're seeing the results where people are throwing for 350, 400, even 500 yards per game.
And I think this is why historians has now a bigger part than ever, because if you have and we talk about Pro Football Hall of Fame process, also selectors, if they are new in this committee, I mean, it could be complicated to understand the magnitude of the player who played in 80 or 70s or 90s, because if you compare of today, because it's a different game, you, you will not see the greatness in the same way. So I,
Mhm.
I think it's good to understand that, and I feel that Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, so the excellence of the game, match with the historians' works more than ever.
Mhm. Yeah,
Eh,
and the Hall of Fame has recognized that, and they've actually put historians on some of the blue ribbon committees. There was a historian put on the seniors committee. I was put on the contributors committee. So they're recognizing that having historians on this committee is good in order to be able to give historical perspective for whoever they're evaluating. But the rest of the selectors, they need to be historians as well. They need to be able to appreciate the game, appreciate the players, understand the changes that have happened over the years and over the decades so that they can truly be able to understand how great they were, not only in their era, but even if you wanted to try to compare them to other eras. Now, how did they stack up? And that's how you're going to be able to tell who are the true greats of the game, who are the true people who've contributed to the game, in order to make sure that you're getting the right people going into the Hall of Fame and you don't have blinders on and it's only for, like, if a media person's only been covering for the last 20 years, that they only look at the last 20 years. Well, you're doing a disservice to everybody else prior to that 20-year period. And so you need to have people that are historians that do appreciate that game and are willing to do that research so that they truly understand these players, these teams, these eras, and know that, yeah, there are different schemes. So you're going to be taking a look at things differently. Players are going to be looked at differently, things like that. I mean, you've got to take all of that into account.
and magician never revealed their tricks, but you as an historian, if for us, I would say the no name
I wouldn't say that.
community. But I mean, for us, the public, if we want
Mhm.
to understand more the history and understand more why these sports do took this evolution, of course we have to listen you guys more. That's the first thing I will say is the best thing to do. But we can also work by our own. What is the thing that we have to do to go to the right direction through the history to understand, and not just the game but every eras or big eras of the sports.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big thing is, if you really want to learn about the game, probably the best way is take a look at some of the semifinalists and some of the names that come out on the list for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You can take a look and see, okay, what made this person want to be, or what made this person get onto this list? Yeah, there's going to be some that are biased as far as, okay, you've got a certain selector that may carry more weight than others, and so they have their favorites. There's always going to be that type of stuff in the process. You can't get rid of that. But if you see names regularly coming up on that list, those are people you really want to take a look at, and take a look at how they compare to their peers within their era. That's going to help you understand not only the players at that specific position, but it's going to help you understand what are the rules that were going on at that time, what made this person so special. And then you can just, keep digging into that. Plus, look at the people that are in the Hall of Fame right now, especially if you want to look at historical context and how things changed. Look at some of the older people that have been put in. Learn about them, learn about their contributions, what made them so special. That's a way to start getting that historical context, and, you know, research as much as you can. YouTube is great. You want to go out there, you want to look at old games and stuff, even if it's just highlights. There's a lot of stuff you can do to try to learn about these older players now. It's not like it was, say, 20 years ago where all you had is maybe newspaper clippings. Now you can actually watch these players on film on YouTube. Go ahead and do it. See why these people were so special. Compare them to other people of that era. Even compare them to some of the people today. And you can see how great some of them were. And you can form your own opinion. You can have 10 historians in a room and come up with 10 different opinions on players. Same with, you put 10 scouts in a room, watch the same game film, you're going to get 10 different scouting reports. It's going to happen. There's going to be differences of opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But make sure that when you are giving that opinion, it is based off of facts and things that you are seeing, and not just a bias of, well, this is my favorite team, so I now have that person elevated up because he played for my favorite team. You've got to take that bias out of it and look at them in context compared to their peers.
That it's absolutely not what I do. No, I'm sorry, I'm joking. This is absolutely what I did.
Mhm.
And the beauty of this, if I can share with you, because I, everyone knows that I work hard to try to create awareness for Richmond Webb. But you know what is good? It's by doing that, I took a better knowledge of the greatness of Bruce Smith. By the way,
Mhm.
I know he
Yeah.
was great with the 300 sacks, but this was not just 200 sacks. It's not
Mhm.
just that. This not just make Bruce Smith's career and legend. You have to understand that what happened during the weeks before the game, for every tackle in the league we will face him, and how would they want to try to avoid the quarterback to be hit because he was on the blind side spot of the quarterback.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and I understand why I talk with you and others that when you start going through something, you going, and it could take months because actually it's amazing. It's like a spider webs. You start with something and it's everything connected and you understand it really better, and why they change the schemes, why they change that, why they try to throw the ball even quicker. But at the end you have to have the route that they have to have a time to do for the wide receiver their right. So you still need protection. So I mean, it's fascinating, and I'm just talking about that, but I can talk about the linebacker position, the middle linebacker position back in the 19s, where they are talking about it's the quarterback of the defense. So I mean, for everyone, I think it's great, and your advice it's amazing, Ken. You start with someone, and you start building your knowledge through the and you contextualize. This word is complicated to say to me, but context. Okay, you
Contextualize.
thank you.
Yep.
Contextualize
It's tough for me
this.
too.
You did that, and you talk about the semifinal. We have to talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame process too. So we are now in the semifinal. So if I doing right, they goes to 50 to 25 to go to the semifinal,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, as
now
far as the modern era, that's
for
correct.
the
Now,
modern era, yeah,
yeah, if you're talking seniors, they've already come up with their 3
three,
finalists. The
and
coaches have come up with their finalists, and the contributors have come up with their finalists. So you've got a total of 5 people. So for the seniors, you have Sterling Sharp, you have
yeah,
Maxie Bond, and Jim Tyrer. Then for the coach, you have Mike Holmgren, and for the contributor, you have Ralph Hay.
okay,
And what's new this year is not only do they have 3 separate blue ribbon committees for picking the 3 seniors, picking the coach, and picking the contributor, but they also split the coaches and contributors. Prior to this year, they were the same category. So now they split that out into a separate category. So now you have 5 people. Of those 5, you can have a maximum of 3 that can be inducted. A minimum of 1, a maximum of 3. So that means 2 of those people are definitely not going to make it. So
okay.
that's what happens in January when they do the voting.
And when you say a maximum of 3 or a minimum of 1, it
Mhm.
depends of how many modern era player will be elected, or it is not related. You
No,
can
it's
have
separate
three.
from that.
You can
It's
have three
separate
or
from
one.
that. Yeah, so basically of those 5, the 3 seniors, the 1 coach, and 1 contributor, only 3 of those can be inducted, and that doesn't, nothing is impacted by what they do on the modern era side.
And so for the senior group, coach and contributors, uh, it could be easier to have more legend be elected or member of those group elected, or will be more difficult, because it's the question, the concern when I talk about the senior group and the contributors or coaches, but senior group because I'm not very familiar with contributors and coach, but for the senior group, um, I'm always saying I hope they always be alive or in good health to receive that. So is that create a better chance for them to be elected quicker, or absolutely not?
It's possible. You still have the 3 candidates. So, because the way the committee normally has been in the past is they favor players over coaches and coaches over contributors. The chances of the 3 seniors making it through are, I would think, pretty good, unless you get a coach in there, like say when Bill Belichick becomes available, he's getting in. So that
Yeah,
means you're going to take at least 1 senior out.
yeah,
And then it depends on who the contributor is. So if you've got Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft at the same time, who, you know, Belichick is going to get in first ballot. There's a lot of push to try to get Robert Kraft in. So if the 2 of them go at the same time, you may only get 1 senior going in. So, and then it still comes down to, of those 3 seniors, how many are going to be some more supported by the full committee? Right
but
now, 2 of the 3 seniors have passed away. Maxie Bond passed away last year, and Jim Tyrer passed away back in 1980 or 81. So you've only got 1 senior that's still alive right now, and that's Sterling Sharp.
yeah, and but if we go into a positive debate, it
Mhm.
could also for sometimes, I mean, through the years you can have 1 year they can elect 2, and 1 year they can elect one per group,
Right.
which is the fairest point. You have one, it's good. One contributors, one coach, one senior. But sometimes you will be able to have two seniors or three seniors. That could
Right.
work too. So
Hmm.
I'm talking. I am really not an expert on that, but if they can fix some, uh, seniors, they could do it because you have a tons of uh, member of the senior group waiting. I mean, I'm not saying I can judging if they deserve or not. I'm not going that, but you can also try to sometimes repair or, I mean, save a little bit the backlog. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm saying that because I feel it, and you tell me if it's right. You could have more senior group players than contributors or coach waiting or not. It's there is a lot of people in those three categories.
Yeah, I would say there's not as many in coaches and contributors. Um, the list there isn't very long. The seniors, that list is huge as far as the people that are deserving that need to be considered to go in. So even at 3 a year, it's going to be difficult. Now, I know the Centennial class back in 2020, that was supposed to help clean up some of that, but they didn't do that because they still focused on some of the more recent players instead of clearing out a lot of the backlog. So they didn't end up fixing anything when they did that. Some people talk about wanting to do another one of those. I don't know if the Hall of Fame is really going to be um, willing to do something like that, but you know, with three seniors every year, the potential of up to three people getting in, they can maybe help clear out some of the backlog. But if those players end up getting rejected by the full committee, then you're kind of wasting spots at that point.
And I think it's the when we talk about the historians, how they are important in the Pro Football Hall of Fame selections. You can be more right when you're saying that. I mean,
Hmm.
if people have focused on first ballot only or recent player or recent eligible player,
Hmm.
because we have to remember, and especially for the European, when a player gets available in the modern era group, he has to wait 5 years
Hmm.
from the start of his retirement, right? So,
Correct.
and you have 20 years of eligibility as a modern era, and you have more possibility because you can have between how many players in modern era you can be elected every years?
Up to five, I think.
Up to five. So you have more. You
Mhm.
you can took your time during 20 years to elect players and not just first ballot. But when you go back to the senior group, if it's complicated because you have people waiting, I guess, from the 50s. So
Earlier. I mean, there's
or earlier,
people waiting from the 1920s.
1920s. So I understand that for selectors who hasn't been very concerned about that time, it's complicated, but it's still the excellence of the game. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's complicated because I always say this when I look at the list of the people who have made the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't see anyone who didn't deserve it. So
Hmm.
at this stage, they have done a great job. I mean, Pro Football Hall of Fame recognize the greatness of the sports still, but of course there is so many great players, so many legend, and so it can be complicated. I will not be the one to judge, and I'm not qualified to judge if they could have done a better job or not. In my point of view, when I see the list, I say, yeah, they did it. They you don't have a player who was bad and have been elected. They don't make that mistake. I guess only if you tell me the contrary. But for me, I think it's fair. But there is so many people. Imagine every team could have maybe 5 or 10 players who think that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. If you multiply that for 32 teams, you can imagine how many players they are waiting. So
Yeah.
if you
And
just have, look at the Dolphins on the senior group, they're all pressing for Bob Kuchenberg or Mark Layton and others. So I mean, every team has those kind of players waiting, and you have the player who are in their final years of eligibility. And I think this is where you can start saving the backlog. When you have someone who really deserves it still in the modern era, I think they can fix it directly. You have Steve Yuski who have 2 years left, and you have a
yeah, I think Wisniewski is close to it. Richmond Webb's close to it. I mean, there's definitely several people that are close to finishing up their eligibility as a modern era candidate. And yeah, I would think that, yeah, if somebody has slipped that long, but yeah, you still feel they are deserving, then yeah, they should definitely be kind of pushed up the priority list in order to try to get them into the Hall of Fame. Um, yeah, I know that the selectors are going to want to focus on more recent candidates. Those are the ones that they covered. They've formed a relationship with them. I understand that. But still, you kind of have to respect the people that have been around and have been waiting an extended period of time. Let them in if you feel they're a Hall of Famer. If you don't, then that's fine. That's your opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you feel that they are a Hall of Famer, take care of it. Fix the issue and get it done. So people like the Richmond Webbs and the Steve Wisniewskis, they need to have their shot. And I'd say get it done now before they become a senior.
Yeah, of course. And uh, I mean, like I said, I'm not qualified to that. I still think that the Pro Football Hall of Fame uh, has made put with those Hall of Famer, they prove the greatness of the game, the excellence of these sports. I mean, for sure. Uh, but yes, if we, I mean, it was Shane Michael. I saying right this year.
Steve McMichael.
Sorry, I'm
Mm.
really
Nah,
sorry.
no
I mean,
worries.
Steve McMichael, when I saw him receiving the gold jacket, it's kind of it's hurtful. I mean,
Mhm.
I would say I would love him to be in better health when he receive it, and I think it's good for everyone to enjoy it when he really deserve it. When he's in the category of being a Pro Football Hall of Fame, I understand in the 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s. 20s, it could be complicated if you're not related with an historian explaining context. Why I'm always trying to using that word, contextualizing, helping you to understand that period of the time, that era. But when you are in the 90s, uh, I mean, it's a little more easy because you still have highlights as and you still have players alive to speak a advocate for other players. So I mean it's easier, but back in the time it's really important to I mean when I read you John Turnez or Jack Silverstein, it's one of great friend of me. When you guys talking to me about a player, I listen to you because uh, you guys are studying. I mean, you don't wake up a morning and say, "Oh, I will this player for a year. I will just speak about this player." No, it's really a hard work and a high selling work. So I'm glad that you guys have been part now on the Pro Football process, because I think it's important to reckon. I mean, we live, and not only in sport, with history. We're learning today, and we're learning what happened. So it's great to have always a history context. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. That, you need to be able to evaluate players to see how great they were at their time. If you try to sit there and just look at statistics, well, yeah, Otto Graham doesn't look as good as Tom Brady. Otto Graham's won just as many championships, but he did it in half the time. And he went to a championship game every year of his career. You're telling me Otto Graham is not on the same level as a Tom Brady just because Tom Brady threw for a lot more yards? Well, take a look at context. One, they didn't throw as much back then. Two, they didn't have as many games that they played in. So, yeah, Tom Brady's going to rack up more statistics. It's only natural. You play more games, you're going to get more stats, especially in a pass happy offense where you're protecting the quarterback. They've got rules in the game now because of Tom Brady to protect him, to make it easier for him. So, yeah, he's going to be throwing more yards. Does that mean Otto Graham's less of a player? No. But you have to put it into historical context. And when you do that, you realize that, yeah, Otto Graham is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So is Tom Brady. But you look at the statistics, you would think that there's a huge chasm between the two, and there isn't.
Mm, yeah. I mean, and I will say for today football, when you look at Saquon Barkley
Mhm,
and Derrick Henry, who are
mhm,
making a great year, and if you look at and you can't. I like to be in a bad position, but contextualizing the football now in a
mhm,
pass-heavy football, and you have
mhm,
two running back who are en route to maybe broke the Dickerson record. They
mhm,
still have to they have they still have yards to win, but they are approaching that,
mhm,
and they are not in the MVP conversation. That's how I learned because of you guys
mhm,
to maybe put more credit on when you have now a cornerback who shut down every wide receiver. I
mhm.
mean, it's huge. I mean, it's huge. Okay,
Yeah.
sacks are amazing, but in today's league, if you are someone who do a Island type of season,
Mhm,
you have to look at him, not just a quarterback, because quarterback we know that they can run, they can pass, they have three option RPOs, so
mhm.
we understand that. But it's not just that. Football is not just that.
Yeah, yeah, and getting back to the context too, you look at, okay, Saquon Barkley may be breaking Eric Dickerson's record for total yards for the season, but Saquon's got 17 games.
Yeah, yeah, of
Dickerson
course.
didn't have 17 games. So again, you look at the context of, okay, yeah, you can accumulate more statistics in a 17-game season than you can in a 14-game season. So that's why, to me, things like averages are going to be better. But even then, that still doesn't help because, again, 17 games where you're trying to create that average. So there's more games where you have to perform at that level compared to earlier in history. So again, gets back to that context that we keep talking about.
Yeah, but I was more talking about the fact that it's a pass-heavy football league.
Yeah.
If you look at Bruce Smith, almost one sacks per game
Hmm.
in a league when you have some less opportunities, not just one game less, but less opportunities because they
Hmm.
were running the ball, and especially against the Bills, I guess the strategy was if we can run the ball, we run the ball. So
Hmm.
so if of you being able to do that with maybe less opportunities, I mean, well, he is an Hall of Famer, so there is no debate. But
Hmm.
you can understand the greatness of of this. And talking about Bruce Smith, we have to talk about the Buffalo Bills. I'm sorry, not for 2 days, but for back in the time when they made four Super Bowl in a row. I don't say the result of the game because I think we have to recognize
Hmm.
contextualize that
Yeah.
being 4 years in a row in the Super Bowl, it's not
Hmm.
something happen a lot of time. And what was the Buffalo Bills in that time? What was the team
Yeah.
that make them so special?
Yeah. I mean, they changed up their offense that year, the K gun offense, and it was a no huddle offense. They moved a lot faster, and defenses were struggling to keep up with them. And I think that's why they were so successful. I mean, they had a decent defense too, so it's not like they couldn't play defense. But yeah, I mean, it's that offense that really set them apart, made them successful. Like you said, they went to four straight Super Bowls. They didn't win them, so I will say the result. But still, I mean, four straight Super Bowls. There are not a lot of teams that can say they went to four straight championship games.
Yeah.
And even though they didn't win, I mean, the Minnesota Vikings lost four Super Bowls. They didn't do it in a row, but you know, not many teams are gonna say that they've been to four straight Super Bowls. And to be successful enough to make it to four straight Super Bowls in 4 consecutive years, it definitely says something. That's an accomplishment, even if they didn't win it.
Absolutely. And what was the years? The 4 years?
1990 through 1993.
Can you repeat?
1990 through 1993. Those were the 4 years.
Okay.
They almost made it in '89. They lost in the AFC Championship game. But yeah, I mean, they get to the Super Bowl. The first Super Bowl against the Giants, it came down to a field goal. After that, the other Super Bowls, they weren't really that close. The NFC blew them out, but they were able to make it even with the adversity of, their starting quarterback going down, Jim Kelly. Even with the backup quarterback, they were able to get themselves through the playoffs into the Super Bowl. So it's got to say something about the resilience of the team to keep coming back, keep being successful, and even facing injuries to your number one person, the quarterback, they were still able to get themselves to the Super Bowl. So it's an accomplishment, in my opinion.
It is, and you took you say resilient. I mean, it's the perfect word, because if you look at the 49ers last year, they were to the Super Bowl, they lose it, and look at today. Look
Hmm.
at this season, and look at how many teams struggle after losing a Super Bowl and took time to go back.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I will not talk about the Miami Dolphins, for example, but there is so many other teams. So to be
Hmm.
able to be fourth in a row, that it is something. I mean,
Yeah.
but what I mean, we all know about Bruce Smith, of
Hmm.
course. I mean, but who was the other players and coach that make the difference back in
Yeah.
that time for the Bills?
Marv Levy was the head coach. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
He had a pretty successful career as a coach, not just with the Buffalo Bills, but he was assistant coach with Kansas City, and he was up in Canada coaching up there. So he was pretty successful. Andre Reed got in the Hall of Fame as a wide receiver. You've got Thurman Thomas, Hall of Fame as a running
running
back.
back.
He was able to run and catch, so he was a true dual threat. On the defensive side, you'd already mentioned Bruce Smith. You had Cornelius Bennett there. I mean, there were a lot of great players across that whole team. Ken Hull, the center, was somebody that I believe belongs in the Hall of Fame. So hopefully his name will come up at some point. But yeah, they had a lot of talent on that team, and they utilized that talent very, very well, obviously, because they were able to get to the Super Bowl 4 years. But like I had mentioned, that even when they had injuries and people went down, they were still able to be successful. You look at the 49ers this year, yeah, they slumped, but you look at, some of their best players missed time. Christian McCaffrey's only played in a couple of games this year. He's one of their best offensive players. Brock Purdy was out for a little bit. Debo Samuel was out for a little bit. You're losing a lot of people. That's just offense, and that's not talking about Bosa on defense. You're got a lot of injuries at the same time, and it's tough for a team to really get going if you continually have injuries to your star players. So again, if you've got that resilience like the Bills did, that's something that's truly special to be able to overcome things like injuries to people throughout their season.
Can we compare that resilience of the season is not finished of the Detroit Lions, or are the most players in on injury reserve and still find a way to win games? Is that kind of resilience that the Buffalo Bills had back in the time between
Yeah, I
the
would definitely
90s and
say so.
94?
Yeah, I mean, they're not without their quarterback. Jared Goff has been playing, but yeah, I mean, you look their defense. One of the best defensive players is out for the rest of the season. You've got other people that are on injured reserve, like you had mentioned, or out multiple games with injuries. So yeah, they would definitely be a team that's resilient and able to get past a lot of the stuff that's been happening and still find ways to win. And they're number one in the conference as of right now. The Eagles are pretty close to them, and yeah, it's still going to be a tough year for them, but they're showing that resilience similar to what the Bills had back in the '90s, as far as getting past those injuries and still being able to perform.
Okay. And I talk to the historians now. Ken, the historian, Ken,
Mhm.
when I think about the Buffalo Bills, the first thing come to me, because I'm a Dolphins follower. It's the Bruce Smith Richmond Webb. I with my friend Ron, who is a Broncos fan. You know him.
Hmm.
He was part of the campaign for Randy Gradishaw, by the way.
Right.
And congratulations to Randy Gradishaw to being
Hmm.
elected in 2024 as a senior with Steve Michael. Um, it was the epic battles. I don't know how you say that in English. You know, the 78 with a little 2. I don't know how you name that in English. It's Matt
78 squared.
78 square. I
Mhm.
named that epic battle that way. By the way, it's Ron. Give me that
Mhm.
name. But and the more I study about Richmond Webb, I understand the the excellence of the matchup, because it was they play 2 times or 3 times a year first.
Mhm.
And for Bruce Smith, if you look at that time, we talk about a run heavy league. I mean, playing against the Dolphins and Dan Marino was like being in a candy store for any pass rusher, because this is where you will have so many opportunities.
Mhm.
But in the left tackle position, blind side for Dan Marino, someone emerged in the 90s, the
Mhm.
1990. It's Richmond Webb, and I know that the both respect each other. They have a lot of respect each other, and but you as an historian, how you saw that matchup? I said epic battle.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct in saying it's an epic battle because you've got two superstars going against each other. And they're at two of the most critical positions. You have left tackle for Richmond Webb, you have right defensive end for Bruce Smith. Those are critical positions. I mean, I've talked with Hall of Fame general managers. They say when they're building a team, they're going to say quarterback, left tackle, right defensive end. Those are the three most important positions. That's how you start your team. And so to see someone of the quality of Richmond Webb going against somebody of the quality of Bruce Smith, you want to analyze that as a historian because that's how we're going to tell how great people are is when they're going up against the best. And when you see that Richmond Webb was able to, for the most part, neutralize Bruce Smith, I mean, he performed very well against Bruce. That tells you something because you see how great Bruce was against other teams. But then he struggled against Richmond Webb. That tells me that Richmond Webb was doing something right. And he had the skills to take on a Hall of Famer and play extremely well. To me, you see something like that, and that tells you that when you dig more into Richmond Webb and you see things, you're saying that Richmond Webb is a Hall of Famer,
And
not just because of Bruce, but
yeah,
that's just one of the data points within everything that you're looking at. But it is a big data point because you're going up against one of the best of all time and you're performing very well. So to me, that combined with how he performed against everybody else, I mean, to me, it makes it a relatively simple case to say that Richmond Webb belongs in the Hall of Fame.
uh, okay, Ken. So thank you very much. And uh, I mean, let's see if we can make Richmond Webb into the final. I think it will be amazing for him, and it will be a great advocate of remembering the great matchup, the Hall of Fame great matchup they have Bruce Smith and Richmond Webb each other. I think it would be a great fair point to Bruce Smith too. I think.
Yeah, I would say so that, watching that matchup not only is going to talk about how great Richmond Webb was, but just showing that, Bruce Smith going up against somebody of that caliber too. Um, Great matchup. Definitely, definitely have to take a look at that on YouTube and, hopefully Richmond Webb gets his shot this year.
And Richmond Webb told me that Bruce Smith was Bruce Smith before I entered the NFL. So he will never take credit on the. He always say that Bruce Smith made him a better player, but he's too humble to say the contrary. So
Yeah, he said the same to me too. So, but yeah, I mean, he is a humble guy. But yeah, he loved those mashups. But yeah, he said that Bruce Smith was a Hall of Famer before he ever went up against him.
so please, to a European and every person, you follow Ken Crippen, follow Football Learning Academy. You have great interviews, you have great article. You it's important to understand the history of football, to understand why today this and that are important. So I think it's important. I think it's important to understand more the Pro Football Hall of Fame process that allowed you to understand more the greatness of the player you can have today, but you have before too. And we all want a fair sport, a fair history, and everyone deserves to have what they deserve to have. It's always better, but we know it's not Disneyland every day. So sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't have it, but you can still remember it, no matter no matter he has a golden jacket or not. We can still remember those great players in the great history of contributors or coaches. Hey, thank you very much, Ken. Uh, I hope we will have another talk because I like to talk with you, and I'm blessed that you accept to have a talk with me because I know how many work you're doing, and you are an important guy in the football, in the history of football too. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and yeah, I'd be willing to come back anytime.
Talking about the Bills, that
We can
can
talk
maybe
often too. That's all right.
they can still they can maybe win this year. We never know. So let's be positive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I keep wishing, and we'll hopefully one of these days I'll get my wish in a Super Bowl victory.
Listen. I will be happy you have that wish before me because I still wish to see the Dolphins winning. But I would love to for you to have it before.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and go Dolphins.
Thank you. Go Bills too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody. Put a positive comments for Ken, and see you for another episode. Thank you, Ken Crippen,
Thank you.
Mr. Ken Crippen.
Thank you.